In this new activity, you are going to do a bidirectional communication between the Arduino and the Raspberry Pi. And your challenge is that when you press on the push button on the Arduino side, so you're gonna read the push button, when you detect that the push button is pressed, you send a message to the Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi will receive that message, will check that it corresponds to a button pressed message, and then it will choose a random LED, so the red, the green or the blue, and it will choose a random number between 0 and 255, and it will send that back to the Arduino, and then the Arduino is going to process this command and power on accordingly one of the color of the RGB LED with the number that we have received with analog write. Okay, so on the Arduino side, you're gonna have two actions. The first is to read the push button. The second is to read the serial. So you read the push button, you send the message to the RPI, so the Raspberry Pi. And here, well, I'm not going to tell you what exact message you need to send, okay? I leave that up to you so you can practice on defining a good protocol for sending and receiving data. And then, well, for the RGB LED, I have given you an example here because that's maybe a little bit more complex. So I give you an example first. What you can do, for example, is if you send a command to power on, so to change the color on the red LED, then you can send something that starts with red, colon, and then the color. For example, 56 like this, okay? If you send something with the green, then you're gonna do green, colon, color, okay, and blue, color, etc. And so you can send that from the Raspberry Pi, and then on the Arduino, what you can do instead of comparing so the equality with string, which you can't do because you don't actually know what number you're gonna get, this is variable, you can do command.starts with, and then the name of the command, colon. Okay, if this starts with this, then you're gonna process this. And how to extract the number that is here? Well, you can first do command.remove. So this is gonna remove the first here, the first part of the string. So you have index 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is gonna remove completely this part, and you're just left with the number. But the number is still a string, okay, because you receive a string, so the number is still a string. So then you do command.toInt, and the result of that is going to go inside an integer, red, that you can use then with analog write. Okay, and you can do the same with green and the same with blue. Now on the Raspberry Pi side, so you're gonna initialize serial, and then you're gonna do a while true, like we did before, and you're gonna check if you receive some command from the Arduino. If you receive something, you check if the button has been pressed. If yes, then you're gonna choose a random number, so between 0 and 2, okay, so that you can have 0, 1, or 2, which means red, green, or blue. And then you're gonna choose another number with 0 and 255. You are going to construct a string, okay, that corresponds to the command you're gonna send to the Arduino. So to choose a random number, you can, well, just import random and then do random.randint like this with the minimum and the maximum. Okay, and this activity is actually a good example of how to use the combination of Raspberry Pi and Arduino for a complete application where the Arduino is basically the muscle of the application, okay? It's gonna read from sensor, it's gonna actuate some sensor, but it's not gonna decide what to do. And then the Raspberry Pi here decides on what to do. So the Raspberry Pi is actually the brain of the application. So you have the brain and the muscle, and basically that's how things work in many different projects with those two boards. Okay, so now I'm gonna see you in the next video for the solution.